Hi, I'm Marty Schupak. Welcome to Schupak Sports and T-Ball America. We go over different drills and coaching theories, and my goal is to help you become a better coach. We also touch upon some parenting issues, very little. And today's session is for 8 to 12-year-olds and coaches and parents of 8 to 12-year-olds in baseball or softball. I'm going to go over three drills, and then in detail, I'm going to go over how to run an efficient batting practice, and which took me a number of years to really get to a certain point. So let's get started. And my producer told me when I hold up the picture, hold it up for a couple of seconds close, and then pull it back. This drill is what I call the wild pitch pass ball drill, okay? And what we do in this drill is we have to start, a player at third base, okay? And the coach will take a ball and he'll hide it somewhere behind the catcher. Now, I like to hide it further away, like down here, whatever. And on the go command, the catcher has to turn, locate the ball. The base runner at third base will break for home, and the pitcher has to cover home. He runs down to cover home. So what's happening is the catcher has to locate the ball. He has to run to it, pick it up, and toss it to the pitcher. The pitcher ideally catches the ball in the third base side. In the drill, I tell the player at third base not to slide. And usually I have all my players slide. But in particular different drills, I tell them not to slide, to stop short. And this is a drill, again, I'm of the theory that you could always tell players what to do. I like to practice different situations. Now, where this gets interesting and what has saved me is when there's a player on third and a player at second, or if the bases are loaded. On a wild pitch or pass ball, in this particular case, if the bases are loaded or at second and third, what I do is I have my second baseman come to the base of the mound over here. And I do that because sometimes the catcher, he'll toss the ball to the pitcher and it'll be an errant throw. And I found that if you have the second baseman on the base of the mound, you could save a couple of runs. If it's an errant throw, not only the player from third will score, but the player from second base will score too. Okay? Now, what I do is this. Having the second baseman go to the base of the mound, his shoulders should be square. Some coaches like to have the first baseman go to the base of the mound. The reason I like to have the second baseman, I feel they're like facing the action and they're running to the action. The first baseman is watching the action too, but he has to more or less slide across the infield. Okay? I mentioned that I do that if it's a runner at second and third or the base is loaded. The last few years when I was coaching, I did it even when there's only a player at third base. I did it for two reasons. Number one, it's good baseball getting the second baseman used to coming to the base of the mound. And the second reason is sometimes crazy things happen in baseball. If the player at third base slides, and let's say he's 5 feet short and he's caught in the legs of the pitcher and it's an errant throw, the second baseman might pick up the ball and just run to home and tag the base runner. So I believe it's a good idea. Always have the second baseman go to the base of the mound. If you are a coach and you feel that it's better for you and your team to have your first baseman go to the base of the mound, then do that. It's up to you. I've had the most success with the second baseman. Okay, so that's the first drill, and do it at least once, preferably in the preseason too. It'll come up during the year. I promise you that. Okay. The second drill is what I call the fielding between legs drill. And let me just hold it up closer. As you notice, the player in the field does not have a baseball glove. And let me just explain why I started doing this drill. I'm of the opinion that a lot of times youth baseball players think in their own minds, and youth softball players, just because their parents went out and bought them a $200 and $300 glove, that if the ball's hit in their vicinity and they just reach out with their hand, okay, the ball will automatically go in their glove. It doesn't work like that. I find that players don't move their feet as much as they should. One of my pet peeves is to get young players to move their feet. Movement is so important. So in this drill, I have a coach. He throws grounders side by side, and the player has to slide and have the ball go between their open legs. There's no catching, there's no glove involved, anything like that. You want to use soft covered balls and maybe even tennis balls. You don't want to hit it with a bat. Preferably, you could throw it underhand rather than overhand. You want to protect the fielder's family jewels, if you know what I mean. This is a very good, it's a simple drill. It's a drill that should be done as part of station drills. I'm a big believer in station drills. I'm a big believer in not having players stand around. But obviously, in this drill, we're only using one fielder. So this is a great drill. You could do it in your backyard also with your own kids. They'll like it. Believe me, they'll like it. I've done it with my kids. So that's the fielding between legs drill. Okay. And we're going to move on. Let me hold this up. This drill is the catcher pop-up obstacle course. Oh, I'm sorry, obstacle drill. And I've always had an affinity for catchers as long as I coach. I remember years ago, one catcher stands out. His name was Matt. I was coaching 9 and 10-year-olds. This kid, he loved catching like no one else loved catching. His uniform would be dirty, almost like in mud. You could see this guy was really into the game. It didn't matter if it was a doubleheader, even a triple header. He'd say, "Mr. Schupak, let me catch every game." The guy was incredibly enthusiastic, and he helped our pitchers at such a young age. And I'll just tell you a little side story. I know a number of scouts over the years. I know the last few years a little less, but every year I'd ask the scouts, "What are you looking for?" And I'd get the same answer: left-handed pitcher and a good defensive catcher. I've never heard anything else, to be honest with you. In this particular drill, what I'm doing is I'm putting a couple of garbage cans on each side, putting down some baseball bats, a couple of bats, which are obstacles. The coach or myself is standing there with a racquetball racket, which I like using, and I'm hitting up a tennis ball. The catcher has to be in the catching position. He's then got to stand up, whip off his mask, locate the ball, toss the mask away, and at the same time that he's tracking the ball, he's got to try to avoid these obstacles. Okay? It's a good drill. It's effective. It's a good thing to do before the season. I have what I call an opportunity time, where before every practice, I have 2 or 3 players come down, and I usually would have 3 catchers on my team, and I would always have them come down once and do this drill. It was very effective and it worked well, and I'm glad I did it. They became better catchers, and I had a couple of catchers that went on to play high school and beyond. Actually, one catcher went down to play, I believe, University of Richmond, and he did well for a couple of years. I want to turn now my attention to batting practice. The first, I guess, year or two of coaching youth baseball, and again, this is particular sessions for 8 to 12-year-olds. I found that my batting practices, I was not happy with them. I didn't think they were efficient enough. I went around to different teams, coaches, try to observe others' batting practices. I actually even went up to West Point. The coach was very nice to let me observe a batting practice after I went through security. But anyway, let me show you exactly what I do. And some of my philosophy comes in here. I'll just point out what these things are. Behind the pitcher's mound, I have an empty bucket. Behind second base, I have an empty bucket. I pitch from the base of the pitcher's mound. I usually have a bucket, and I put a bucket upside down. I put a bucket of baseballs on top of that. And that's where I feed the batters. Okay. You should have an L screen. I go to the base of the mound because I'm throwing more strikes. I'm a big believer philosophically in bunting. I always have been. Bunting has kind of, I want to say lost its value, but it's not being done as much in the major leagues for a number of reasons. But because I emphasize bunting with my team, what I do in every batting practice is I put 2 cones around the third baseline, about where a bunt's supposed to go. And what I do is the first 2 pitches, the player bunts. If it goes between the 2 cones, they get 1 extra swing for each bunt that goes between each cone. If you want, I've done it too, you could set up 2 more cones on the first base side. It's up to you. So that's how I started. Now, what I do is, as the players arrive at practice, I give them a number. The first person to practice, number 1, second, number 2, and so on. And then when I do batting practice, that is the order they will bat. So it's giving them motivation to get to practice early. And the way I run it is this way. We start batting practice, number 1's at bat. Number 2, the second batter, on deck batter, is in the dugout, ready to hit. When I say ready to hit, he has his batting gloves on, he has his helmet on, he has the bat he's going to use available. The second on deck player I have behind the fence. He's working with another coach doing the toss drill. I have another coach with the other on deck batter, the triple on deck batter. He's doing hitting off the batting tee. Now, what I do for the toss, I use what I call rag balls. If you can look at it closely, it's not really complete. It's a rag, and what I do is I encircle it with 2-inch and 1-inch masking tape. This is only partially done. Okay, and what I find that is when I'm doing the toss, in our field, we would do it against the back of the dugout. All right. You don't want to do it against the fence if your league doesn't allow it. Some leagues will not allow, let's say, a hard ball, but you have to ask them if you could do a rag ball. I found that the rag ball doesn't scatter as much as, let's say, wiffle balls or the other type of balls that looks like a wiffle ball. I forgot what the name of it is at this point. Pickleball. I'm sorry, pickleball. When you do the hitting off the tee, I even have the coach do the rag ball or like a softball like this. Again, if you get into pickleballs, excuse me, or wiffle balls, they're going to scatter. You want to run an efficient batting practice, not only batting practice, but efficient practice where you're not spending most of your time gathering up balls. Okay. Now, back to the batting practice itself. With the two buckets, what I tell the players to do after it's hit to them, they have to roll the ball to the bucket. So the infield rolls it to the bucket behind the pitcher's mound, and the outfield rolls it to the bucket behind second base. When I run batting practice, it's exactly what it is, batting practice. There's no such thing as run the last one out. There's no such thing as the fielders fielding the ball and throw it to first base. The fielders will field the ball and they'll roll the ball to the bucket, which is appropriate to where they are. If it's the infield, it's the bucket behind the pitcher's mound. If it's the outfield, it's the bucket behind second base. That's the way I run batting practice. I usually keep 2, 3, or 4 balls in my glove as I'm pitching. And on the last ball, I'll yell out, let's say, number 5 come in. He'll come in. The one thing you have to do, and again, these are kids, the player that's at bat, you got to keep an eye on him to motivate him to getting out in the field. And he's got to go like around to get in a position on the field. It goes fast. You'll learn different things. You'll hear the sound of the bat hitting the ball. And just from the sound, you'll know at what point when to pitch another ball that's in your glove. It's hard to explain, but once you try this technique, you'll see that it works. So those are the 3 drills. We're going to close this session out in just a second. And that's how I run batting practice. Do it any way you want. Make it better. All fields aren't the same. This is showing the 2 drills, toss and the T drill on the same side. I actually moved it to the other side. If you don't have enough assistant coaches, just have 1 drill, the toss drill, okay? But try to get your assistant coaches involved. And I just want to talk about integrating what I call mechanical principles into instruction. And what this I mean is that you want to give players the proper technique, because if they are at a certain age throwing the ball the wrong way, it's so hard to undo these motor patterns. When kids are in T-ball, I'm of the opinion, let them do it any way they want, okay? You could do certain things at their youngest age to help them, but when they get a little older, it's so important teaching the right techniques. My son, who was a pitcher, my middle child, he had a hitch in his delivery. And it took me a little while to correct it. And when I did, he became a pretty good pitcher. But you want to do it younger rather than older. I also want to give you a parental tip. I was guilty for a long time. Before I'd go to bed, I would read or look at my iPhone. And I did a lot of reading that said that, and some said you should take out, I guess they call it a blue light, whatever. But I just cut out for like 2 hours before I went to bed looking at my cell phone. And I recommend parents shut off all screens, either an hour or 2 hours at the best. I know it's hard to do, so try an hour or 45 minutes before your kid goes to bed. I found that my sleeping has become better, and it's so important to get a good night's sleep for your kids, for not just sports, but for school. So try and do that. All right, now as far as products, here we go. This is one of my favorite books that I wrote, 44 Baseball Mistakes and Corrections. I'll have a link below And the reason this has been is I noticed my teams were players were doing the same mistakes every year. I started documenting it, and look, there were way more than 44, but I took the 44 most common mistakes. Uh, just to give you an example, players holding the ball too long, not doing a rundown correctly. And talking about rundowns, what I want to ask you, how many throws is the ideal number to rundown? The answer is actually none. Um, the second best number of throws is one. Okay. And I'm of the opinion in rundowns that you never run the player just back to the base, take the easy way out. I believe rundowns are a gift from the baseball gods to get an out. You have to practice it. So it was stuff like that in this book, and I highly recommend it. I'll have a link. The other one is it's actually a video, and I got a note because I mentioned that I instead of buying a $250 baseball net, I built something out of a tarp, and it's right in this video. It's free if your library is part of a program called Hoopla, and I believe it might be available in Overdrive and maybe Canopy. Canopy doesn't have all my videos. I'll also put down the link to Amazon. I don't think it's more than $2, but I highly recommend it. So these two items for this week are the products that I'm kind of pushing. I do have another book that's going to be out in a few weeks, but I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to ask you to do me a favor. Please, I'm trying to build up this program. Share it with your friends, with your league, with your neighbors. Please like me, and please put down a review. And if there's anything you want to see, you let me know. Until next time, this has been Marty Schupak for Schupak Sports. I'll meet you at third base.